beyond the
No, it's
beyond
not.
the time?
It was a 7. It's your floor. Now the recording has started. Rabinderji, please go ahead.
Okay, and 1 second, please. I wasn't sure that. 1 second.
So, Ankur, you're joining us from Jammu, or?
Yeah,
Yes,
I have heard of Ankurji and heard him past also, because I'm from Kashmir, and so I know his exude and what his work has been. So it is pleasure to meet him here, actually.
Thank you so much.
Actually, I watch your videos on a regular basis. Okay, so the Ankurji, you are the main speaker, I believe, in this case, and everybody, Mr. Ankur Sharma ji is from Jammu. He's a fellow J&K person, as I am long back thrown out of that place, of course. And he has been, I don't know personally, I know his work. He started his organization Ekjut about 3-4 years ago, I think, and which has been bringing out the issues which the Jammu Dogras in particular have been facing about the systematic discrimination which was taking place by the previous government of the PDP, and prior to that National Congress. So it has been actually happening since 1940-47, and it was, to me at least, it was a personal pleasure to see him pointing it out. There, not many people had the courage to bring this out and present it to the audience. And so it's pleasure to see Ankur Sharma ji here. Please welcome Ankur Sharma ji, and he'll be talking about the subversion of J&K Jihad. And namaskar to everybody. I'm slightly disoriented because I was thinking that I will have to, Rajiv, you will be here actually. But anyway, so please, Ankur ji, take charge.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you just mentioned that I will be talking about the kind of subversion that has happened in the state of J&K. In fact, it started way back in 1947 after independence. Mr. Sheikh Abdullah and the Islamist regime here in J&K managed to introduce a secular article 370 and 35A in the secular constitution of India, to create what we call as a non-secular theocratic Islamic state within the secular polity of India. I mean, you have one Muslim majority state with which the Union of India has an arrangement saying that since it is a Muslim majority state, therefore under Article 370, the Indian constitution, the infidel constitution, will not apply. Since it is a Muslim majority state, therefore it will have its own constitution. Since it is a Muslim majority state, therefore it will have its own flag. So what we had was a state within a state. And the foundation of that state was Muslim subnationalism. In the last 70 years, before August 5, 2019, the Indian state marketed this arrangement as refutation of two-nation theory. In fact, it was based upon the very concept of two-nation theory. So this is a general model that the Muslim Brotherhood deploys to purge democratic societies, that you get into democratic institutions, you subvert them from within, and then you destroy democracy using those democratic institutions. So what the manifestation of this model we found in the state of J&K, or in fact in India, way back in 1947, when through constitutional arrangement, the Islamists managed under the secular cloak to create a non-secular theocratic Muslim state within a secular territory of India, or the secular polity of India. So that is how it started. So I was specifically tasked today to talk about state-led demographic invasion of Jammu, or demographic assault on Jammu, or what is also popularly called as land jihad in Jammu. Now, since using Article 370 and 35A, the state of J&K was not secular. So therefore, the land jihad process or the state-led demographic assault or the demographic assault in J&K was also state-led. Now, when I say state-led, how do I say it was state-led? Because it is the state instrumentalities which were deployed to unleash land jihad against Jammu. It was the state institutions, the democratic institutions using which this phenomena was unleashed against Jammu. And why did they unleash it? We'll have to understand it in the background of Brigadier S.M. Malik's book or Pakistani generals' idea as to how do we go ahead unleashing Ghazwa-e-Hind on entire India. They say for Ghazwa-e-Hind to happen, fall of northern India is important. And within northern India, fall of Jammu is critical. So how do they ensure that? As far as Kashmir is concerned, that's 100% Islamized, the valley. There were very less number of non-Muslims, especially Hindus. They're killed. They unleashed the worst genocide in the history of the country against the Hindus of Kashmir. And that is how it was Islamized. But how do you Islamize Jammu? Jammu province comprising of 10 districts. So unleash demographic jihad on Jammu. It has to be state-led. And how it will be state-led? You have already a non-secular Islamic, state instrumentality deployed using the Indian Constitution. So the State Legislative Assembly was in the most impressive manner used to legislate what is called as J&K State Lands Vesting of Ownership to the Occupants Act, which is also popularly known as the Roshni Act. So they legislated a law with 2/3 majority to grant state lands in Jammu province in favor of Muslims. Of course, the law had this provision that it can be granted to anybody. But what we saw is that this legislative intervention or this law was used to give away state lands in ownership to a particular community, Muslims in Jammu province. That was number one. So through lawmaking, they ensured that lands, state lands, government lands, public lands in Jammu are handed over to Muslims. That happened in 2001. In 2007, the rules were amended, and it was very, very, in a sinister manner and a very, very effective manner was used against Jammu. And what we saw is encroachments and grant of ownership to Muslims in huge numbers, in large numbers, in several lakhs of canals of land were given away to Muslims in Jammu in Hindu majority areas using Roshni Act. That's number one. Second, the chief minister of the state, it was a PDP-BJP coalition government, and it was being headed by Mehbooba Mufti. She came out with an executive intervention. That is how they use democratic institutions, the position of chief minister. She came out with what is called as 14th February 2018 order. This executive order granted immunity in favor of Muslims to occupy state lands, forest lands, river lands in Jammu province. What it effectively said, it was a 4-page order. It said that if Muslims occupy state lands or forest lands or any type of lands in Jammu province, no DM, district magistrate or district collector or deputy commissioner or SSP will take any action against them. Suppose there is a court order, then the police head of the district, the SSP, shall not provide any police assistance for carrying out eviction of Muslims. And the third immunity that granted in favor of Muslims categorically was the Muslims in Jammu province, if they are found engaged in cow slaughter or bovine smuggling, then provisions of Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, as well as Section 188 of the RPC, shall not be invoked against them. So what we had is, through a chief ministerial diktat dated 14th February 2018, a legal immunity granted to Muslims to occupy lands in J&K, in Jammu province especially, and to engage in cow slaughter and bovine smuggling. Several thousands of canals of land was occupied or encroached in this manner. Now you had Rohingyas and Bangladeshis, the third mechanism that the state of J&K deployed to take away or to occupy lands in Jammu so that Jammu can be converted into again, a Muslim majority domain. So Rohingyas and Bangladeshis were settled under the argument of humanitarian requirements or humanitarian needs. It is the state of J&K which granted them ration cards illegally, Aadhaar cards illegally. And we have sufficient information and proof with us suggesting or establishing that some of them actually got state subject certificates as well. And what is very peculiar in their settlements is that Rohingyas and Bangladeshis are only made to settle in Jammu province. The Hindu majority districts of Jammu province, namely Kathua, Samba, Jammu, Udhampur. These are the places where these Rohingyas have been settled, and very, very specifically around military and security establishments. That's another way of changing the demography using the state apparatus. It is the state apparatus which gave them opportunities of employment, which gave them residences. And whenever the demand for their ouster or their deportation came, it was refuted by the chief ministers, by all the state instrumentalities. Now, another modus operandi, they made a law to give away lands to Muslims. They made an executive order to grant legal immunity to Muslims to occupy lands. They also did one thing. They kept quiet when Muslims were occupying lands in Jammu, or Muslims are occupying lands in Jammu. For instance, forest lands, riverbeds. Now, what we did in J&K High Court is to call for certain reports regarding encroachments of rivers and forests in Jammu province. So the first report that came in a sealed cover, a report prepared by district and sessions judge of Jammu district. Other members were deputy commissioner, divisional commissioner, etc. Some few members of the forest department also. What we saw that river Tavi, which is Suryaputri, which is the revered river, having the status of, a goddess. Within Jammu municipal limits, 668 encroachers have occupied the riverbed. Out of 668, 667 are Muslims. That is what the report prepared by a committee appointed by a division bench of Jammu and Kashmir High Court suggests. If you talk about river Ravi, if you talk about river Basantar, if you talk about Bainala, if you talk about Chenab, the riverbeds, the embankments have been exclusively captured and encroached by members of a particular community, that is Muslims, through state connivance. And in fact, I would not say acts of omission, but through acts of their commission as well. So you have forest lands. The reports also came in J&K High Court. This was our allegation that the forests in Jammu province have also been encroached by Muslims in the name of tribal rights or otherwise. So we have a full-fledged city now in Jammu called city of Bhathindi, a place which is a recorded forest even as on day in the revenue records, and no sale purchases can happen. So it is a forest land where you have 15 to 2,000 exclusively Muslim settlements around Jammu on forest land. So you have madrasas, you have illegally built mosques, and you have a full-fledged radicalization and indoctrination machinery and a full infrastructure within the heart of the city, Jammu, on its forests. The other reports also came, district Udhampur, Jammu, Samba, Kathua. The names of the encroachers, their entire details were presented before the court, and you will be surprised to know that more than 90% of the encroachers of forest lands are Muslims. So now you have a model that where in a Hindu majority city, around a Hindu majority city, whatever the forest area is, you go it, you capture it, you create ghettos, you create an exclusive concrete jungle of Muslim settlements, and that is how this model can be deployed elsewhere. I'll not go into that because I have less time. I have been told to speak only for 20 minutes. This same model was deployed in Kathua district through Rasana, the infamous Rasana rape and murder case. That is also a place where this Batindi model was being deployed, and city of Hiranagar or district Kathua, there also a forest ghetto comprising of Muslim settlements was sought to be created. I'll not go into the details, but I'm making just a reference of that. In 1991 also, the chief minister, the then chief minister, 1991 or between 1991 and 93, Farooq Abdullah was the chief minister. He came out with an order saying that an exclusive Muslim colony should be created in Jammu. So that is something which was also classified document. Ultimately, it came into the public domain, and what we saw is creation of so many muhallas and colonies and areas around Jammu, around Kathua, Samba, encirclement, etc., happening through state interventions. The rate of change of demography of Jammu, the demographic scientists say, is critical. It is very, very alarming. That is how they categorize it. Now, question is what Jammu did in fighting against these state interventions, which had the active backing of the state of India, the Delhi, because that is how these people come into power. The Islamists, they have this constitutional protection and the backing of Delhi, and that is how it happens. So I challenged the constitutional validity of Roshni Act in 2014. This was kind of a legislative jihad, which I could understand that it is happening through this. So it is in October 2020, after a sustained, relentless, constant fight against this legislative jihad in J&K High Court, that I could get it demolished, destroyed through the J&K High Court in October 2020. So the Roshni Act 2014, I challenged, to 2020, it's gone. 14th February 2018 order, the chief minister's order, it was a classified secret document. I, Ekjut Jammu, and I personally came out with this document in the public domain, exposed it, and directly attacked the sitting chief minister. That's a different story, that she wanted to detain me under the Public Safety Act, preventive detention. She could not do so because the newspapers published the expose of 14th February 2018 order with my exact quotes saying that Jihadi Mehbooba unleashes jihad against Jammu. She was the sitting chief minister. As far as Rohingyas and Bangladeshi settlements are concerned, we're fighting against them. We have made it a point that everybody knows the security threat that is involved because of the settlements in Jammu, and we are very happy to say that people in Jammu now know that Rohingyas have to be ousted. It's only a matter of time that we'll be pushing the state as well as the central government to act under the Foreigners Act. As far as forest land encroachment, river and land encroachment through state support is concerned, people of the area know we have sufficient evidence and proof brought directly through authorities in J&K High Court, on the basis of which we have built a very, very strong narrative that this land jihad, this demographic invasion in Jammu is state-led. Not only it is state-led, but there are also many non-state actors which are acting to accelerate the pace of demographic assault on Jammu so that it can be used as a springboard or as a launch pad for Ghazwa-e-Hind against the entire nation. You have what is called as funded colonization of Jammu, where Islamic NGOs, by getting money from abroad through Hawala channels, are subsidizing land purchases in Jammu in Hindu majority areas. Last we came to know the subsidy is 30%. So if a Muslim buys a land in a Hindu majority area in Jammu province, in Jammu district, in Samba, Kathua, Udhampur districts, so if they get it for 1 crore, these NGOs will return back, or will, as a matter of subsidy, will provide them 30 lakhs as compensation for purchasing lands. So that is also a phenomenon which has been recorded, for which sufficient evidence has been accumulated, and we have all of that. This is funded colonization of Jammu. So you had another, enabling environment by the government, where the revenue officials, the lowest rung revenue official, who is a very vital, cog in the entire wheel, the post of Patwari, which is a district cadre post, people from Muslim districts or Kashmir were sent to Hindu majority districts in violation of the service rules. A Patwari cannot be transferred outside his parent district, but these were transferred outside their districts, and they would make revenue entries in favor of Muslims. And we have sufficient proof to suggest that several lakh canals of land was involved in this manner, where you had suddenly Muslim claims coming up in Hindu majority areas that this land belongs to us. So these were the Patwaris who used their position in violation of law by coming to Hindu majority districts through Kashmir, etc., in violation of service law as well, to create records in favor of Muslims, and ultimately they could get ownership under Roshni Act or some other scheme, or at least a stay order from the court on the basis of Girdavari entries, which were illegally made. Now, the issue is that the problem Jammu is facing is the connivance of State of India with the Islamist regime in J&K. Yes, in August 2019, Article 370 and 35 were abrogated, but that is only demolishing the de jure Islamic State. That only the legal edifice was demolished or destroyed. The de facto Islamic State is still in existence and is being nourished by none other than the State of India. I mean, if they had to take 10 steps in taking abrogation to its logical conclusion, they have stopped at it. They are moving in reverse direction, and they are giving messages and signals that nothing has changed. We did it, but we in no manner are committed to taking it to its logical conclusion. So we'll have to understand here, and in the entire, background of what is happening in the country is from the last 70 years, that the State of India is hostile towards the nation of India. The State of India is against the nation of India. The State of India is lacerating the nation of India. So for instance, whatever is happening continuously in the state of J&K is an example of it. And how do I say this, that the State of India is against the nation of India? For instance, the State of India does not believe in Sanatan Indic civilization's continuity. The State of India still believes that India is a nation in the making. It does not believe in civilizational continuity. In 1947, Muslims divided India. So as a national security imperative, maintenance of Hindu majority character should have been the first priority for the State of India, because it is only because of the Muslim majority character of certain areas that the territory was divided. The act of war, what should be an act of war for the State of India? Hindu genocide should be an act of war for the State of India. But what we have seen in Kashmir and other districts of Jammu province, where in the 1990s and after that, the worst Hindu genocide was unleashed, the State of India is in a denial mode. It doesn't even recognize formally or officially that whatever happened to the Hindus of Kashmir in 1990s and Hindus elsewhere in Muslim majority districts of Jammu province is genocide. It doesn't consider genocide of Hindus as act of war. And that is how I say that these are certain instances on the basis of which we can say that the state is against the nation. You talk about minority rights in J&K. They are being illegally taken away by the majority community in violation of the constitution and the law. Muslims are getting minority benefits in J&K. Now, what I did in 2016 is to challenge this arrangement in the Honorable Supreme Court of India. I fought that case for 2 years. I won that case. The Supreme Court of India appointed a joint committee of the state government as well as the union government, and they filed an affidavit. In my case, Ankur Sharma versus Union of India and others, PIL 489/2016. And on 12th March 2018, on the basis of the assurance given by the governments in that affidavit, the case was decided in our favor. It was said that Muslims in J&K will now not get minority benefits. But it is ironical to see that even as on date, despite a Supreme Court judgment and acceptance by the government of the fact that we are doing something illegal in J&K, the union government, the state government is as on date handing over minority benefits and minority status to the majority community, which is Muslims of J&K, which is against the law. You have a 15-point program run by the Prime Minister's office in India, the implementation guidelines of which at clause 7b says that Muslims of J&K will not get minority benefit. Violating its own guidelines, the Prime Minister's office is giving minority benefits to J&K. Not only guidelines, but also the Supreme Court judgment or the order, or dishonoring their own affidavit in the Supreme Court. Now, what is more important? It is 60 to 70 schemes, thousands of families being empowered through scholarship minority schemes per year. That's one part of it. That what is due for non-Muslims is being given to Muslims by the state of India in violation of the constitution. And we're talking about fundamental rights here. Article 29 and 30, the minority rights. These are not simple rights. That's one part of it. But if Muslims of J&K get minority status, that under the UN's charter, human rights are available only to the minorities against the state. So if Muslims of J&K have minority status, they automatically are covered under the UN charter and they are entitled for human rights. Hindus are not. So any violation of human rights entitles them to have a presentation before UN or UN affiliate agencies, and that is how they get international support for secessionism. Who is providing an enabling environment to the secessionists in Jammu and Kashmir to have an international support for their movement? It is the state of India. It is not Pakistan. It is not China. It is not any other entity. It is the state of India, by granting them minority status and hence coverage under the UN Charter, that UN and UN affiliate agencies can interfere in the sovereign affairs of India on the grounds of violation of minority rights, human rights of the minorities. That's another instance. So where we say that state is working against the nation. State is hostile towards the nation. What you see in J&K is state takeover of Hindu temples. J&K is not a Hindu majority state. Elsewhere also in the entire country, this is the problem. But wherever Hindus are in minority or lesser in number, that's the same attitude. I, around 2 years back, challenged the constitutional validity of the Mata Vaishno Devi Shrine Board Act in J&K High Court. And this current dispensation government files a reply that no, this temple will not be given back to Hindus and state will continue to run the affairs of Hindu temple. The law of the land under the constitution is this: a secular state cannot run religious institutions. Only on the grounds of mismanagement, etc., it can take it over for some time. But as far as taking over power is concerned, the taking over power is available to the state against all communities, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christians. But in the last 70 years, the state of India has selectively taken over only Hindu religious institutions. That's selectively. So they're implying indirectly that mismanagement, maladministration, and corrupt practices are associated only with Hindus. Not even a single mosque has been taken over in the last 70 years, or for that matter, Gurdwara or a church. So therefore I say, and you also see in the state of J&K where Muslims are in majority, the Hindu religious institutions are being run by the state, and which I earlier described is a non-secular theocratic Islamic state. And the money that they collect from these temples, donations, they use it for non-Hindu purposes. Everybody knows it. I am not going into that because that's another topic. Now they are again wanting to take over Machel Mata Yatra. That's a very famous temple after Vaishno Devi, located in Kishtwar district of Jammu province. We are fighting a case against it in J&K High Court. We are trying that it should not be taken over. But the position of the state is they appointed Bashir Khan advisor to decide on the question of taking over of a Hindu religious institution. And that is how, again, we say the state is working against the nation. You, after the abrogation of 370 and 35A, you do not have a strong or any anti-cow slaughter law in J&K. Because that is something which annoys Islamists. Islamists should not be annoyed. And therefore, we will not have an anti-cow slaughter law, which is a civilizational requirement in the state of J&K and elsewhere, I mean, in country also. So therefore, state is again what we say is hostile to the nation. After and I'm concluding it now, after abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, the balance of power in J&K, we expected that it will be shifted from Kashmir to Jammu. Now, in its quest to ensure that Muslims in J&K continue to govern democratic institutions or control democratic institutions, the state of India, in connivance with the Kashmir Muslim establishment, did so many interventions. Fudging census was one of it. They started with ousting everybody who did not belong to National Conference from entering the Constituent Assembly. That was the first intervention that the state of India did. 75 out of 75 members of the J&K's Constituent Assembly, an assembly which was to decide the relationship of the state of J&K with the Union of India, that was filled only by the members of National Conference. All other nomination forms were rejected. They were not allowed to participate or contest elections. So that is how the first intervention. After that, successive census have been fudged by the Kashmir-based Muslim establishment in connivance with the state of India against Jammu. So when 370 and 35A were abrogated and Reorganization Act came, we believed that these historical wrongs will now be corrected. But what we saw in the J&K Reorganization Act is that they are again planning to conduct, or they are conducting, fresh delimitation exercise. I mean, an exercise on the basis of which it will be determined who gets how many number of seats. How many seats in the Legislative Assembly does Kashmir get? How many seats in the Legislative Assembly does Jammu get? They are conducting it on the basis of fraud and fudge 2011 census and not fresh 2021 census. It is a decision which has been taken by the government of India through Parliament, Reorganization Act. It is the official position of the current dispensation also, BJP and RSS, that 2011 census, 2001 census, they were fudged. The population of Jammu province was decreased. The population of Hindus was decreased. The population of Kashmir was shown to have increased by numbers which cannot be sustained or explained by any logic. So it is a general position that if 2011 census are made basis for delimitation, Kashmir will have more number of seats. Kashmir will have its own chief minister. If 2021 census happens, and on that basis delimitation exercise is taken, Jammu will have more seats, if not more, equal number of seats. But again, they're handing back power to the Kashmiri Muslim establishment through this intervention. As a matter of fact, we are protesting against it, but nothing seems to be happening. Islamization of Himalayas is what is the project of Pakistan by their own admission. For Ghazwa-e-Hind to happen, Himalayas, the cradle of Sanatan Indic civilization, has to fall. They started with it way back, but in 1990s succeeded in Islamization Kashmir. Same thing is happening in Himachal Pradesh. Same thing is happening in Uttarakhand and all other states or areas where Himalayas are located, because Himalayas are the cradle. Now, as a strategic importance to reverse the process of Islamization of Himalayas in which they have succeeded and are succeeding in Jammu province, it is imperative that the state of J&K should be reorganized. The Kashmir Valley should be divided into 2 union territories, one exclusively for Hindus of Kashmir, the victims of genocide. And for that, the state of India has to come out of its denial that nothing happened against Hindus. It was only a migration. When you deny genocide, you engage in committing double genocide. Denial of genocide, in fact, is the climax of genocide. It is the state of India which is engaged in, taking genocide to its climax by denying it. So, Islamization of Himalayas, natural strategic security requirement. You have to have a strong geopolitical Hindu foothold within the valley, which has been Islamized. And that can happen, and giving a secular argument with this, because this dispensation needs secular argument. So for rehabilitating and resettling victims of genocides, Hindus of Kashmir, you can go ahead and create a strong geopolitical Hindu foothold in Kashmir Valley and make Jammu a separate state, so that this Muslim Brotherhood model of purging democracies by entering democratic institutions, by using freedoms available in the constitution, constitutional democracies, to enter democratic institutions should end. And why should you hand over your democratic institutions to secessionists or half separatists or anti-national entities? NC, PDP, they're all Pakistani flanks. They are the people who are subverters of democracy. Why should you hand over your democratic institution, and that too on falsehood or on interventions which are not, on the basis of interventions which are not permissible under law? So I'll end by saying that we are also discussing this in the background of whatever has happened in Afghanistan. If you see the situation in J&K as on date, I can conclude by giving this thing to the audience, that you have Afghanistan, Taliban in Afghanistan, you have ISI in Pakistan, and that axis is completed when you have a half separatist regime in Jammu and Kashmir, NCPDP, backed by the state of India. So Taliban, ISI, Kashmir, NCPDP backed by Delhi is the worst axis, the most dangerous situation that is erupting, which will ultimately lead to other genocides, takeover of Hindu lands, I mean, using Jammu as a launchpad or a springboard for unleashing Ghazwa Hind. I think with that, I'll end my address. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ankur Sharma ji. You came for me, you came out larger than what I knew you. And I have been following you for the last 3-4 years now. And actually, it is very horrifying of listening to extent. I knew the to extent to which the things have happened in Jammu. Actually, I studied in Jammu in Araspura, RS school, higher secondary school. And lived in Pakidaki area. So I'm very well aware of what was going on here. But the picture which you have just portrayed is really very horrifying. Is there any mechanism? I would actually also request the audience, if they have any questions, please raise your hands so that you can ask the question to Ankur Sharma ji. Is there any mechanism for example, in Jammu area, to have an alternate strong Hindu party who can contest these issues?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ekjut Jammu Party is one such alternative. We believe that Jammu needs a strong regional ideological alternative. The paradigm, the policy paradigm of the state of India as far as J&K is concerned was always that J&K should be in the hands of Kashmiri Muslims, so that to the world we can establish that in 1947, when Kashmir decided to merge with India, and when Muslims are the face of democracy in J&K, this can be portrayed as a victory of India's secularism and democracy. So that has been the state paradigm, and therefore that is how Jammu is excised out of the entire equation. Jammu is disempowered, Jammu is enslaved, Jammu is made hostage, and Jammu is rendered mere as a colony of Kashmir. So this realization is dawned on the people of Jammu now, and we are making it sure that people know it, that in the last 70 years, Jammu has all along been used only as a doormat in terms of the policy paradigm that the state of India has towards J&K. So it is very important to have a regional ideological alternative who does not listen to Delhi and who does not talk about Kashmir. And that is what we are all about. And all, manifestations of jihad in J&K we are fighting. And that is how we are going, right down to the grassroots level of the society, building an organization and trying to create a political alternative which ultimately fights against jihad in Jammu by naming it like jihad. and not covering it up like the state of India or other political parties. So we are already on that, and we have taken this responsibility on our shoulders that Ekjut Jammu will take the cause of Jammu forward. We are already taking the cause of Jammu forward. The laws which were legislated against Jammu, we made sure that they are quashed, they are dismantled. The orders which were passed against Jammu, we made them redundant. We fought against sitting chief minister, the entire cabinet, so many corruption cases also. The Roshni case, you also know whatever is happening there. So I think these things are happening, and ours is now a registered political party. We are yet to receive a symbol, but that is going to happen in another 15, 20, 25 days. And we have declared that Ekjut Jammu will contest coming assembly elections on all seats of Jammu province.
I see. I would have loved to ask you some more questions, but I think there are people who are waiting in the line. Nabendu Palji, please ask the question.
Yeah, Ankurji, first of all, namaste for beautiful exposition of the ground realities in Jammu and Kashmir. I'm from Bengal actually, and we are seeing the same Islamization along this Bangladesh-India border. I mean, if you look at the eastern part of Ganges bordering Bangladesh, that is pretty much now being converted into an Islamic land. Okay, now come back to this Jammu. I believe that in Jammu, BJP state unit has a strong representation. It has a very strong hold. So what is the state units, BJP state units, I mean the Jammu parts, stand on this? I mean, why don't they take any action? This is number one question. The second question is, what I'm very much afraid is if you are forming another political outfit, it is going to divide the vote and it is going to eventually help the jihadists. So have you thought about that? Because this vote sharing is the most dangerous thing that happens for the Hindus, and eventually we get defeated by our own action plans. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So as far as the state unit is concerned, like I talked about the state of India's policy paradigm on J&K, it is as follows. Power in J&K should be handed over to Muslims of Kashmir so that it can be described to the world as victory of secularism and India's democracy, because Muslims happen to be the face of Kashmir, a place which chose India and not Pakistan in 1947 when the concept of two-nation theory had been unleashed and India was divided into two. So that is how the state of India started. So state BJP unit is also suffering the same syndrome of the state of India. Even after 2014, this policy paradigm did not change. So therefore, we returned 25 MLAs in favor of a political party in the name of Hindu issues, and they handed it over and gave it to Mehbooba Mufti or the PDP for practically all purposes. The state of India in the current dispensation is in denial of Hindu genocide. It is the current dispensation which is engaged in the process of secularization of their organization. It is the current dispensation which denies state-sponsored demographic jihad on Jammu. I talked about Roshni Act. I fought for 6 years in court. It is the current dispensation, or the people we believe will fight for us or Hindutva issues, who were opposing me in the court. Roshni Act was a legislative tool of jihad. To demolish it should have been the prime responsibility. But look who was opposing me in the court. It is the same people that you believe will be fighting for us. They are in denial of Hindu genocide, denial of land jihad. And now, once the act was declared unconstitutional in October 2020, and the court ordered that all allotted land should be taken back, it is the current dispensation which has filed a review petition in J&K High Court saying that we want to come out with a scheme through which, and it practically says so, through which we can give away ownership of these lands to poor Muslims. I mean, people who have built single houses. So 400 canals of land was captured by one colonizer, and it was sold exclusively to Muslims. 400 families were settled, and now these 400 families, the state says, are poor people. They've built their houses. Entire encirclement of Jammu is now being sought to be regularized by the people who we will be fighting for us. That is the situation we are suffering here. It is an existential threat. We cannot live in wishful thinking that they will do something for us, when on the contrary, they're doing something which is against us and they're doing everything which is in the favor of the enemy party or the ones who are unleashing genocide against us. And same is the situation in Bengal. We now do not have the luxury of living in wishful thinking. So therefore, we have taken this responsibility on our shoulders that we'll be fighting against these odds by, of course, in a democratic society, forming a political party. It's a subversion that has entered in that political party also, which we believe will be fighting for us. Bengal is the recent example you saw. Hindu genocide in Bengal was termed as post-poll violence. What can be worse than that? And the minority rights, what is due for Hindus is being given away to Muslims. They are empowering Muslims. They are at the cost of other minorities, Sikhs or Buddhists or Jains. 4 to 5 lakhs of scholarship in one scheme. One beneficiary gets 4 to 5 lakhs. There are 800 such as a scholarship scheme, 800 beneficiaries in one scheme. Imagine 60 schemes empowering in 70 years, how many families? And then international support for secessionism because they have the minority status and human rights are available only to the minorities. So that is something we are fighting against. In fact, the plan of Greater Muslim Kashmir or consolidation of Muslim areas or Muslim ghetto in J&K. I mean, Kashmir is Muslim majority. In Jammu province, you have certain districts which are Muslim majority. So how do you connect them? How do you bind them? That was what Sheikh Abdullah had planned, and that is what is called as Greater Muslim Kashmir, so that Hindus can be taken care of. Because Islamization of Himalayas, for Ghazwa-e-Hind, Islamization of J&K, Islamization of Kashmir is over. So you connect 2 highways, these districts with Kashmir. It is the current dispensation which built 2 highways connecting Muslim majority districts of Jammu province directly with Kashmir. After that, the radicalization has increased manifold in these districts. I'm talking about Rajouri, Poonch, Doda, Kishtwar. Then how do you connect them psychologically? You create false identities. This BJP dispensation gave a formal stamp or recognition to false Muslim identities which have been coined by Islamists in J&K. For instance, Doda and Kishtwar area, there they say that this is Chenab Valley. Chenab is a river, Chenab is not a valley. Everybody understands that there is no valley which is located in Doda or Kishtwar region. Now, since it is a Muslim majority area, they gave it a false identity, Chenab Valley. And then there is Pahadi area, Rajouri and Poonch. They say this is Pir Panchal. There are so many other Pahadi areas also in Jammu province, but they are Hindu majority areas or districts. So that these areas do not have a city. So this Pir Panchal and Chenab Valley, false Muslim identities, Muslim identity politics was given, and this was accepted, validated, formalized by the current dispensation. So the acts of war on Hindus are being facilitated by the by the current dispensation also. I'm not absolving Congress. Congress started it all. Congress deployed all these policies or formulations within the state apparatus, and that is how the state was taken over, because individuals were planted, formulations and policies were planted within the state apparatus, and that is how the state became a tool of jihadists against the nation. And that is why you find that state is hostile towards the nation. And Francis, I cited in my speech, my address. So now we are not living in wishful thinking. The luxury of wishful thinking is not available to us. We are in the front line. Bengal is gone, Kerala is gone. In J&K, it is the state which is unleashing jihad against us. We can't be living in wishful thinking. Therefore, we have taken this responsibility to fight them. We are fighting them since 2014. If I talk about me in very particular, people of Jammu are fighting them. But there is no alternative left now but to form a political party and fight against them and fight for Hindutva interest. Our votes should go to the right people. Our votes should go for the right cause. That is what we do.
Mamta Kabraji, can you please ask your question? Please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah. Hey, hi. Thanks for giving me a chance. So I heard sir saying that the Islamization of Himalayas and the whole strategy behind that. So my question, of course, I do even agree with one point of having a political party out there that will be a better representation. And Then my question is that how, I guess there's a lot of background noise here. Hello?
Can we mute everyone, please?
Yeah, there's someone, yeah. Yeah,
Dilip Bhattacharya probably has to mute his.
Okay, I'll just do it. I'll just do it.
Thank you.
yeah, because I think TV is on. Yeah, background TV is on. Yeah, okay. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So my question out here is, firstly, I even see the, you know, the political debates that happens, and where, you know, these people keep on always saying that Kashmir is like a place of Islam and Kashmir was a part of it. So why don't we start, when you start your political party, why don't you spread that whole thing about Hinduism related to Himalayas? Well, present Himalayas as the land of Lord Shiva. Because ideally, according to our Indic civilization, it is actually a, you know, place of Lord Shiva. So this is how we have to start again, you know, spreading the message and start relating back these lands to our culture, which will be the
Mamtaji, can you please ask your question, because we don't have a lot of time, please. Sorry about interrupting.
Yeah, so my question is this only. So can we come up with these type of ideas where we start again relating back Kashmir to the original Hindu civilization, and, you know, spread across India and across the world? Because every time I hear in the TV, it's all about that, you know, Kashmir is a place of Islam. That is what is coming up, and this is how it's spread across the world.
Got the question. Ankurji, please.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on it, and we are conscious about it, and we are doing it. The problem with the mainstream national media is that it calls only Kashmiri Muslims to have their point of view. So we are also battling those odds. And I think the idea through social media, and we also participate in debates that happen on national medias, but we get little chance whenever it comes, whenever it is about Jammu and Kashmir, somebody either from Kashmir or somebody either in Delhi gets the chance to represent Jammu and Kashmir. But slowly and steadily we're getting these chances, and we are conscious. That is why, how I say in the beginning, that since Himalayas are the cradle of Sanatan Indic civilization, Pakistan, ISI, Islamists understand that. And therefore, Islamization of Himalayas is their project. So when I say that it is the cradle of Sanatan Indic civilization, we understand that Kashmir and Himalayas, what does it mean to us? And you rightly said that we should project this thing in a more amplified way. We will be doing that. That's a great suggestion.
Great, thank you.
If I may add to that, please keep in mind, the two Kashyapas are from Kashmir. Kashyapa's grandson is Manu Vatsavasya. Manu Vatsavasya's grandson is Yayati, and all the Chandravanshis and Ikshvakus come from Manu Vatsavasya. So actually, it is the source of Bharatas. It is the source of Ikshvakus also, because Kashyapa is actually dweller of Kashmir. But that's separating from that. The Srinivas ji, can you please ask the question?
Hari Om, Ankurji, thanks a lot. It was a great presentation. And every time we hear this kind of information on Kashmir or Tamil Nadu, even Tamil Nadu, this is what is happening today. It really worries me a lot. But my question is, how are we going to raise enough fund? Because the funding is the biggest issue. On one end, we have all these so-called pseudo-intellectuals and Hindu liberals who talk about equality and all the secularism, all the crap they talk about, and they just dismiss most of the facts. But one thing is, we have to spread this message across. That's one challenge. And we need the world press to listen to us, the social media to listen to us. And at the ground level, people like you are, really taking up this cause and fighting it in the Supreme Court, and that those are not getting implemented today. Although Supreme Court has given the dictatum, most of these things are not implemented or it's not enforced. So that is one worry. But more importantly, how do we fund? I mean, what are you guys are doing to raise fund so that you all can sustain and do your work? And that really worries me, that I'm not seeing in the Hindu community. Unless we all start spending money, some X amount of money every month on all this, it's not going to happen. Things are not going to happen, sir. Sorry, I mean, people like you are great, but without everybody putting in money, some resource into this, things on, we're just going to be talking and holding conferences. That's about it. And sending WhatsApp messages. I mean, that's my 2 cents. So how are you doing about the funds? What's your funding situation? How do you do that? Sorry to ask you this question.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also battling this. I mean, facing same issues. And you rightly said that Hindus will also have to get their acts together and start funding for such kind of initiatives or this thing. But then there are people supporting us. We are, I mean, the normal modes of collecting money, asking people, self-funding also in most of the cases. As far as fighting elections are concerned, it's a huge project, and we will be now going to the people. There are people who are identified. There are organizations which are identified. Uh, it's a ongoing process. There are people who are contesting elections on our ticket who can contest elections. But like I said, that since now we do not have the luxury of wishful thinking, we also cannot wait till the time we get funding and start doing something. We've been doing it and will continue to do it. Yes, we require funds. Funding is a big issue. It is a big challenge. We are short of funding. But all ways, all legal ways, or all manners in which we can convince Hindus to put in their money for right causes, we are doing it. And I think people like you can also support us by spreading the word. I mean, this conference is also one of the platforms where many people can connect with us and seriously contribute, donate, and spread the word even across. I mean, if Aam Aadmi Party can get so much of funding from outside or abroad, the Indian diaspora probably can invest and should invest in all those interventions which are seeking to revive the great glory of our Sanatan Indic civilization. So that's only an appeal that I can make. But yes, funding for any Hindu initiative or organization is always a big challenge.
Ankurji, if we can have your contact, and so that people, if they want to contact you later, they can contact you.
Yes, my WhatsApp number and the only number that I use is 96222 57548. I'll repeat, 96222 57548. I am also on Facebook and Twitter, Ankur Sharma _ADV, advocate, the first 3 letter, AD, Ankur Sharma _ADV. And if you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me by typing Ankur Sharma and the name of my native place, Kathua, Kathua. So on my timeline and even on Twitter, in fact, on Facebook timeline, I have put up everything that I discussed today. Videos, evidence, court cases, newspaper reportings. If you go to my Facebook timeline, and I would request all of you to go to it, you will get sufficient information. And it's clean timeline. I have not enabled that tag thing. So what you see is only the kind of activities we are engaged. There are no personal posts. Everything is informative about J&K, about nation.
Yeah, I think Alok Kumarji, this will be the last question because I think we are running out of time. So please make it short, and Ankurji, give it the short reply if you can. Alok Kumarji, you are on mute. Okay, I think time is up, and so we should stop at this point. Ankur Sharmaji, thank you very much for such an enlightening information. I think this is an ongoing struggle for you are leading, and a lot of us are, in some sense or other, connected to this region, and we would support you as much as you can. And thank you everybody who attended this meeting. Thank you
so much, and thank you so much for the invitation.
So who is the next person?
Right. So next person will be